Yeah. Gosh. Where to find it? You got it? Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhaja Jana Ranjana Munatira Vanachari Yamuna Tiravana Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 25 Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 25 Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari That's one. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanajari Yamuna Tiravanachari. There you go. Zoom. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Can't figure out how to zoom. Up top. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Maybe 300. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Haribo, 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 Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Statara Pravakacharya's Divine Grace of Charan Avinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anatikoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Jai, Shri Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Shri Gangamai ki jai, Shri Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani ki jai, Samaveda Bhaktavinda ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Jai. This morning we're reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th Canto, Chapter 47. This is text 25. This is continuing with Uddhava speaking with the residents of Vrindavan. Bhagavat Yuttama Shloke Bhavati Biranutama Bhakti Pravartita Dishya. Lost it. Muninam apidulaba. There it is. Bhagavatya tamasloke. Bhavati biranutama. Bhakti pravartita distya. Muninam apidulaba. Bhagavat Yuttama Sloke Bhavati Biranutama Bhakti Pravartita Distya Muninam apidulaba. Goodies. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhavati Biranutama Muninam apidulaba. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhavati Biranutama Bhakti Pravartita Disya Muninam apidulaba. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhavati Biranutama Bhakti Pravartita Disya Muninam apidulaba. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhavati Biranutama Bhakti Pravartita Disya Muninam apidulaba. Bhagavati for the Supreme Lord, Uttama Sloke, who is glorified in sublime poetry. Bhavati be by your good sense, by your good selves. Anuttama, unexcelled. Bhakti, devotion. Pravartita, established. Dishya, congratulations on your good fortune. Muninam, for great sages. Api, even. Durlabha, hard to obtain. Translation, by your great fortune you have established an unexcelled standard of pure devotion for the Lord, Uttama Shloka, a standard even the sages can hardly attain. Please repeat, by your great fortune, you have established an unexcelled standard of pure devotion for the Lord, Uttama Shloka, a standard even the sages can hardly attain. Purport by the servants of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The term pravartita indicates that the gopis brought to this world a standard of pure love of God that was previously unknown on the earth. Thus, Uddhava congratulates them on their unparalleled contribution to the religious life. Om Jnana-Tiramandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Vir Krishna Das Goswami Niti Namine Namaham Sanakashaya Prabhupada Priyate Sudrida Sudi Nistambam Tashavaki Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Sunyavadi Paschatati Shatarine. So I have a few things I wanted to read. That's a very sort of a short purport, but it's extremely impactful. If we contemplate that the gopis are the gold standard or the topmost example of pure love of God that was unknown on this earth, Uddhava is saying to them and is congratulating them on that. And in this translation as well, or actually what he says, he particularly calls the Lord, I was reflecting on, his name is Uttama Shloka, because he was comparing the gopis' standard to something that the sages can hardly obtain. And we know the sages, they're always trying their best to perfect their recitation and their memorization, and also speaking about so many shlokas, right? And so the Lord being Uttama Shloka, the topmost, you know, that's not what captures him. That's not capturing him, you know, that sort of mood of merely approaching him through that. You know, of course, everybody can approach through the literature and try their best to understand Krishna, but even the sages can't understand this bhav that the gopis have. So some of the purports from our acharyas I wanted to read unpacks it a little bit more. So this is from Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who says, in a paraphrase, "Your bhakti is very different from other types. This is the supreme form of bhakti, anuttama, which has not existed before. However, following after your ragatmika bhakti, raganuga bhakti will be spread as a practice in the future. This is for the good fortune of the people in general." Dishya, and there's that word again, the good fortune of the people in general. And he's also, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is speaking about their ragatmika bhakti, and we've heard, actually we were hearing in the Jaiva Dharma that explained very nicely when His Holiness Sri Krishna Goswami was unpacking the Jaiva Dharma. Ragatmika bhakti is the kind of bhakti that practiced without any care or consideration for social conventions, for societal norms and mores like that. And that's ultimately what we as Bhakti Yoga practitioners aspire to practice like. But being in our place and time and circumstance right now, that's that's not what we should be doing. We have to get to that point first, obviously. So there's quite a long way to go, because we're still trying to just get offerings on the altar on time. So Jiva Goswami says, your bhakti consisting of Mahabhav is Nitya Siddha. How can one praise it enough? However, it should be praised as auspicious for all people by teaching it to them. The highest bhakti, Mahaprema for Krishna, who reveals all his powers, Bhagavati, and therefore is most praised, Uttama Shloke, has been spread, Pavartita, to people by the power of seeing and hearing you. It will be said in verse 26, you have rightfully claimed the privilege of unalloyed love for the Lord. Anyone who faithfully and continually hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the highest type of prema to the Lord, quickly destroy lust, the disease of the heart, and immediately become steady. And that's from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 33, Text 39. This prema has appeared by good fortune, Dishya, which, Jiva Goswami and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur they are both talking about that prema by good fortune. So that's the third time we're hearing about good fortune, Dishya. And then I'm just going to read about, I'll read Sanatana Goswami's purport. But you have preached to the people by your conduct incomparable bhakti called prema to the Lord, who manifests all his powers and who is most worthy of praise. This has produced good fortune, Dishya. It gives the highest benefit to the whole world. It is not easily attainable by all persons. It is rare even for sages like Sanika. Bhakti is the highest result. Therefore, Krishna will automatically be controlled. So all three of the acharyas and presumably who wrote this purport have brought up this word, Dishya, good fortune. And Prabhupada actually spoke a lot about the good fortune that he bestowed on everyone who will take this process of bhakti yoga. And he even had said that he had created all of our good fortunes, which, as we can discern practically, that's true. Srila Prabhupada single-handedly created all of our good fortune, having had the privilege to practice bhakti and worship the Lord. And one last thing I wanted to read before we discuss is in the Krishna book. Prabhupada didn't have the opportunity to write purports for these later chapters of the 10th canto, we know. But in the Krishna book, he actually unpacks it in a very step-by-step, but also very direct way, because this is not it's not really easy to grasp. I think maybe all of us have some experience with a loved one of some sort, somebody that we truly respect, admire, want to serve, feel so much outpouring of, love, compassion, friendliness, kindness, respect, all the things we all have experience with some loved one in our life. And it's quite an esoteric concept to think about loving someone without limits, because even in this world there are some limits, right? There's limits with our social position, there's limits with our time, there are many limits with our bodies, our mind, the other person, there's many boundaries, both seen and unseen. There's many boundaries, or put up, or not even elucidated. So this is from the Krishna book, and Uddhava is trying, little by little to speak with them and soothe them and try to reassure them like that. Prabhupada says, the all-pervasiveness of Krishna is explained in the Bhagavad Gita in both the 9th and 7th chapters. In the 9th chapter, Krishna is described as all-pervasive in his impersonal feature. Everything rests in him, but he is not personally present everywhere. And in the 7th chapter, it is stated that the 5 gross elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and the 3 subtle elements, mind, intelligence, and ego, are all his inferior energies. But there is another superior energy, which is called the living entity. The living entities are also directly part and parcel of Krishna. Therefore, Krishna is both the material and the efficient cause of everything. He is always intermingled with everything as cause and effect. Not only the gopis, but all living entities are always inseparably connected with Krishna in all circumstance. The gopis, however, are perfectly and thoroughly in cognition of this relationship with Krishna, whereas the living entities under the spell of Maya, the illusory energy, are forgetful of Krishna and think themselves separate identities having no connection with them. So this is really an important point that Prabhupada is bringing forth here and is providing a little bit of an explanation of how and why the gopis act in such a way, which may seem to us as very unconventional. I mean, we hear about that so many times throughout the Bhagavatam, especially in the later, particularly chapter or Canto 10. But, the very famous example of Narada Muni, Krishna feigning sick and Narada Muni going to so many residents trying to find a remedy because Krishna's asking for the foot dust of his devotees, and no one wants to give it up because it's offensive. It's in their mind, there's that social convention, there's that sort of limit, they're limiting their love, they're limiting their reciprocation with Krishna. So when finally Narada Muni goes to the gopis to ask for that, the gopis don't care. They just want Krishna. They love Krishna. They care about Krishna. They want to see Krishna happy. They want him to feel good. So they're giving their very life and soul. They're giving whatever that is required by Krishna to help him or to heal him, ostensibly. Prabhupada goes on, love of Krishna, or Krishna consciousness, is therefore the perfection of real knowledge in understanding things as they are. Our minds can never be vacant. The mind is constantly occupied with some kind of thought, and the subject matter of such thought cannot be outside the 8 elements of Krishna's energy. So Prabhupada's telling us, or reminding us that our mind is limited because we're limited jivas. We can only think about so much. We can only do so much. We're bound by these material constraints. One who knows this philosophical aspect of all thoughts is actually a wise man, and he surrenders unto Krishna. The gopis are the epitome of this perfectional stage of knowledge. They are not simple mental speculators. Their minds are always in Krishna. The mind is nothing but the energy of Krishna. Actually, any person who can think, feel, and will cannot be separated from Krishna. But the stage in which he can understand his eternal relationship with Krishna is called Krishna consciousness. The diseased condition in which he cannot understand his eternal relationship with Krishna is the contaminated stage, or Maya. And I would say that that's probably 99% of the world. We're in this sort of disease state where everything that's put in front of us, as Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings in a lot of his songs, this is just sort of this phantasmagoria that somehow has captured our senses, and we're, invested, or we're emotionally invested, our minds are invested, and all these things, and I think all of us can attest, I can attest, sometimes it's difficult, once the mind starts gnawing on something. It's like a bulldog that gets something in his jaws and won't let it go. It's just ripping it around, and you have to like ruminate on it and try your best to keep remembering Krishna. I mean, one way that, like personally speaking, I feel is effective for me is just to let the mind ruminate on whatever it wants to ruminate on for a little bit, because if you start trying to jerk it back and telling it no, at least for me, my mind is extremely, I'm very stubborn, and I just want what I want, and I want it now. And to try to, you know, stop it, it reminds me of like having children. The kids are playing with something that they shouldn't be playing with, basically. And, really, I found the only effective way to curtail that. You can't tell the kid no. You can't say it's not good for you. They don't want to hear. They just want to do what they want to do. So when there's that brief second when the mind puts down that thing that they're, got a hold of in their jaws, and it does happen because we can't, we're not machines. There's got to be a break. Then you can just take that thing and you can put it out of sight. That always works with children. If you just put it up out of sight and they can't think about it, they don't remember, because the mind's so chanchal. It's always moving, and it's always looking for the next thing to sort of sink their teeth into. But that's unfortunately our disease conditioning in this unfortunate material world. And Prabhupada's underscoring that the contaminated stage, Maya, is kind of, we're in the milieu, and, at the very least we can try to read and hear as much as possible about, this is an exercise in freeing the mind. When you think about the gopis and how powerful their love is, that Krishna, he's in Mathura, and everybody can see, they're actually withering and dying. They're like something you plant in the ground, and if you don't give it water and you're just expecting it to grow, it's not going to happen. You have to tend to it. You have to take care. That's the gopis are. They're always flourishing, and then when Krishna leaves, that separation, they're withering. It's killing them, that separation. They're actually they can't think about anything else. Since the gopis are on the platform of pure transcendental knowledge, their minds are always filled with Krishna consciousness. For example, as there is no separation between fire and air, there is no separation between Krishna and the living entities. When the living entities forget Krishna, they are not in their normal condition. As for the gopis, because they are always thinking of Krishna, they are on the absolute stage of perfection in knowledge, which is the Ragatmika Bhakti, Ragatmika Bhav. The so-called empiric philosophers sometimes think that the path of bhakti is meant for the less intelligent. But unless the so-called man of knowledge comes to the platform of bhakti, his knowledge is certainly impure and imperfect. Actually, the stage of forgetfulness of our eternal relationship with Krishna is separation. But that is also illusory, because there is no such separation. The gopis were not situated in that illusory condition of life, so even for the philosophical point of view, for them there was no separation. So, Krishna's always in their mind. They're always thinking about him. They're always remembering him. They're remembering his smile. They're remembering his playfulness. They're remembering all the things that, has captured them. And for us, our only hope besides reading and hearing about this way of life, which is what it is worshiping Krishna on a regular and daily basis. And I'm gonna boldly say that probably the easiest way to remember Krishna is actually worshiping the Archa Vigraha form, which is prescribed by Prabhupada. When we actually come in contact with that form, such as Radha Golokananda, who, they've been here collecting and overseeing and, receiving service from dear devotees for almost 40 years now, which is a long time. When they're here and they're able to, we're able to worship them in an intimate way, that begins to overtake our consciousness about, with our relationship in mind, but also as a servant relationship, which is also what the gopis are doing, is serving Krishna, serving the Lord. You start to think about all aspects of Krishna's day. It's kind of like having a child, but definitely a more like a child that you have to really be on top of, because I'm sure some mothers can attest, or you've heard about sometimes moms are overwhelmed, or fathers, they're overwhelmed, and they're they have to take a break, they have to step back, or they have to do something to break the monotony kind of thing. Because it's a lot, it's a lot having someone relying on you all the time, which is basically the position of a child. And although, factually that's not the case with Krishna, he's not relying on anybody. He's aptakama, he's completely self-sufficient. So it's, interesting to think about it in those terms. But we have that little bit of the Vaidhi Bhakti here, particularly, which helps keep us in our lane. We can actually understand that, okay, Krishna needs to eat here, 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 and here. He needs to get dressed twice a day. He needs to be comfortable. All the things that we might think of in relationship to a loved one. I mean, that's basically what we're all doing here. Whether it's straightening up his place, Krishna's place, whether it's, cooking a nice offering for him, making garlands, making deity sweets, thinking about what he's going to wear on a special day, quality of boga. I mean, there's so many things down to detail. And yes, it is Vaidhi. We're working under that kind of construct because we are in the material world. We need that here. We need to, for our own self, we're not at the point where we're purified and we can do things quite spontaneously. So, there's time constraints, there's constraints on supply chains, there's constraints on the weather, there's so many things. But at the end of the day, when you reflect and you think, okay, everything went well, okay, maybe there was a little bit more improvement that's needed in this department, this and this happened, which caused this. So there's a lot of things that is constantly needing assessment. And in that sort of worship, or in that sort of life, it's actually quite easy to remember Krishna all the time. And hearing, it's two tracks of the train, as Prabhupada said. There's Bhagavat Vidhi and Pancharatrika Vidhi. So the Pancharatrika is, worshiping, it's reading, is Bhagavat. So there's two tracks that we actually have to follow in devotional life. It's really, really important. And Prabhupada stressed that so many times, Before I even came to this temple, I was reading books for almost 5 years. I was reading about Prabhupada's books for almost 5 years. Zero devotee association, talking to no one, didn't see how a temple worked, didn't understand what went into it, had no idea. But from Prabhupada's books and his stressing, his constant stressing that the thing to do to kind of tamp down our material conditioning so we can at least start to understand best service to the Lord is to do the things needed to get ourselves together so we can take Brahman and we can worship the deity. That was my goal when I moved here. I didn't understand what that meant. had never laid eyes on a deity. I never had even seen anything about a form of any Lord, except for maybe some statues of the Virgin Mary somewhere. I didn't know exactly what deity worship meant, but the deity worship is an extremely critical component to beginning to understand even a little bit of what the gopis are doing, understand a little bit this Radgatmika Bhakti. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, says that's the gold standard for the rest of us to practice somewhat of a Raganuga Bhakti, which isn't on the same, lack of social conventions. Raganuga, it's a term, but I feel like it's also, there's a little bit of spontaneity in it, but within the construct of what's already established. We're not making the same garlands every day. We're not dressing them the same every day. So there's some little bit of creative leeway, which actually is, the jiva's opportunity to bring their proclivities and their propensities out in their worship, to actually help deepen their process of worshiping the deity, worshiping Krishna. And, for us, we have that unique opportunity because Radha Golokananda are very, very, very kind. They're very reciprocal. They're very patient. They're very tolerant. I mean, I was actually reflecting on that yesterday. The level of kindness and tolerance exhibited by Radha Golokananda is quite astounding because, we've seen things go on that are kind of mortifying that maybe is happening with the deity or is happening in the temple. It's kind of, it's a little, it's intense to, because everybody's doing their own thing and everybody's trying to figure it out, and that's understandable. So all we can do is wait for the Lord to sanction or dismiss those attempts, right? And that requires us being a little bit vulnerable and open to correction and also observant, so we know what to do and what not to do to stay in that association of Radha Golokananda or your deity of choice, to allow them to do their work and to purify us and to bring us to the highest level, higher and higher, until one time my guru said that we just have to keep serving and serving and serving and serving no matter what. And one day we're going to wake up and we're in the spiritual world and we're going to think, wow, looking around, the whole scenery has changed, and we're continually still serving Krishna, thinking, oh, I remember when I was in that circumstance serving Krishna, but now I finally gotten to the place where I can just serve with abandon, serve without constraints, serve without rules and regulations. And that sounds actually extremely exciting to me personally. And hopefully, as we read more about the gopis and we understand their bhav, and with Prabhupada's, of course, help and encouragement, we can all come to that platform where we are serving in that way. So thank you very much. I guess it's time to greet the deities. That was really fast. All glories to Srimad Bhagavatam. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to our Guru Parampara. And all glories to Sri Sri Radha Golokananda.
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandar Agom Vikamaniya Vishesha Shobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Andani Yasa Sakalen Priya Priti Manti Vasyan Dipan Kayanti Jiram Naganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadhu Jala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami 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 Govindam Janamagoaenu Hari Hari Pipale Janamagoaenu. It's page 30. Manusha Janamabhaya Radha Krishna Nabajiya Nanamabhaya
Bhajiya Manusha Janama Paya Radha Krishna na Bhajiya. Radha Krishna. I don't think it's up very high. I don't think it's on. Janiya Shuniya Bisha Koino Janiya Shuniya Bisha Koino Ya Bisha Koino Golokera Premadana Harinama Sankirtana Harinama Sankirtana Ratina Janmi Loke Nitai Ratina Janmi Loke Nitai Loke Nitai Samsara Vishanale Divanishi Ajvale Divanishi Ajvale Judaite na koinu paya Judaite na koinu paya Brajendra Nandanaye Sachi Sutta Hoilo Se Nandanaye Sachi Sutta Hoilo Se Balarama Hoilo Nita Hina hina yata chilo harinama udarilo harinama udarilo Tara Shakshi Jagai Madai Aha Prabhu Nanda Sutta Vrishabhanu Sutta Yuta Sutta Vrishabhanu Sutta Yuta Karuna Koro Hoe Baro Narottama Dasakaya Nateli Horanga Paya Dasa
che amara. Manusha janama paya Radha Krishna navajiya. Mapaya Radha Krishna navaji. Janiya shuniya bisha koinu. Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda Radha Goloka Nanda Shri Radhe. Jaya Radha Goloka Nanda Radha Goloka Nanda Shri Radhe. Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Radhe, Jaya Shri Radhe. Jaya Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Giri Govardhan, Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham. Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Giri Govardhan, Jaya Shri Vrindavan Dham. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev. O Lord Hari, I have wasted my life. Although I have taken this rare human birth, I have not served Radha and Krishna, and thus I have knowingly drunk poison. The treasure of divine love in Goloka Vrindavan had descended as the congregational chanting of Lord Hari's holy names. Why did my attraction for that chanting never come about? Day and night my heart burns in the fire of the poison of worldliness, and I have not accepted the means for relieving it. Lord Krishna, the son of King of Braja, became the son of Sachi, and Balaram became Nitai. The holy name delivered all those souls who were lowly and wretched. The two sinners, Jagai and Madai, are evidence of this. O Lord Krishna, son of Nanda, accompanied by the daughter of Vrishabhanu, please be merciful to me now. Narottama Das says, O Lord, please do not push me away from your reddish lotus feet, for who is my beloved except for you? Narottam Das Thakur ki jai. Cheto darpana marjanam bhava mahadavagni nirvapanam Sreya paravatan vipavataranam.
Daivam Idrishan Hajarna Nuragaham Trinada Pisu Nichana Taroda Pisa Hijnuna Amanina Manadana Kirtanya Sadara Hari Nadanam Najanam Nasumdarim Kavitam Vajagadisha Kamaye Mama Jamana Jamanishvari Bhavata Bhakti Haitukitwai Ainanda tanuja kinkaram pachitamam vishameva bambudo kripaya tavapada pankaja stita dulisa drisam vichintaya nayanan galada shrudaraya vadanangara budaya jira pulakai nichitam vapukada tavanamagrahan bhavishachi Jugaitam nimishana chakshusha pravrisaitam sunyaitam jagasarvam govinda virahename Ahlishyava padaratam pinashtumam adarshanam mahamahatam karotuva jata tato va vida tato lampato ma pranata chusevana paraham. Victory to Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of all the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtana movement is the prime benediction for humanity at large because it spreads the ray of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss, and it enables us to fully taste the nectar for which are always anxious. Oh my Lord, congregational chanting of your holy name alone can render all benedictions to living beings, and thus you have hundreds and millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names, you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. Oh my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy name, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself, and devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Oh, my Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want numbers of followers. I only want your causeless devotional service birth after birth. O son of Maharaja Nanda, Krishna, I am your eternal servitor, yet somehow or other I have fallen into the ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. When will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Stand on end the recitation of your name. O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I am feeling your vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but, and he shall remain, so even he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Let's continue our prayers to our very dear Mother Kamalini for her fast recovery. Haribo. Jai Prabhupada. Buenos días. ¿Qué tal? Ahí tranquilo. Muy bien. Muy feliz por estar aquí con las Vaishnavas.